Okay, I want you to take a deep breath and just let your shoulders drop for a second. Really. This space, right here, right now, it isn't for the learner who finishes first. It's for the learner who rereads a single line 3 times. It's for anyone who has ever stared at a dense manual or a sprawling textbook and felt the instructions grow so large that they completely eclipse your own mind. If you've ever felt left behind by complex information, I want you to know something absolutely crucial right up front. You are not broken. You can understand difficult things, and today we are going to explore exactly how.
Think back to a time when you sat down to learn something new, and suddenly the page in front of you felt completely impassable, like a literal wall. In our source material, we meet a student named Arun who experienced exactly this. He was 19, sitting in an economics class, just staring at a projector screen. The assignment up there wasn't just a list of words to him. It arrived in his mind as a single, towering mountain. He felt late before he even picked up his pen. Now, teachers might look at that delay and call it poor discipline. Friends might call it a lack of confidence. But the truth is so much more human than that. You see, the learner isn't lazy. The learner is overloaded.
So what if the issue isn't your brain power at all? What if the problem is simply that your mind hasn't yet been taught how to sequence and enter complexity? We live in a world that completely worships speed, right? But speed without structure, it often just produces brittle, fragile knowledge that falls apart the second it's tested.
Consider this profound insight from the text. A slow mind may still move beautifully. I just love that. A slower processing pace isn't a handicap. In fact, it often gives you the space to actually notice the deep underlying structure of a concept. A slow learner takes the time to build durable foundations, the kind of foundations that fast memorizers routinely skip right over, because honestly, speed never gives you the luxury of pretending to understand.
And this brings us to a really fascinating phenomenon called compression overload. When Arun looked at his assignment, the instructions told him to read a passage, identify the argument, distinguish assumptions from evidence, summarize it, and then compare it. Okay, that is not one task, that is 5 tasks. But because no one had taught him how to split it up, his mind received all 5 operations as one massive, undivided object. He experienced its sheer size long before he could process its meaning. And what does that kind of massive size create? Immediate, paralyzing fear.
Understanding this completely reframes something we all struggle with: procrastination. For years, we've been told procrastination is a moral failure or a lack of willpower, right? But cognitive psychology tells us it's actually a psychological shield. It is a highly effective, protective response against the threat of confusion, shame, and unbroken complexity. Your brain senses danger in the fog of that assignment, and it hits the emergency brakes to keep you safe.
Think about it. Have you ever found yourself waiting for the perfect mood to start studying? Or maybe you spend an hour perfectly rearranging your desk before opening a single document. Why do we do this? Well, because delay acts as emotional anesthesia. It protects us from immediate failure. If you're planning, you feel temporarily competent. If you're cleaning, you have the illusion of movement. You aren't avoiding the work itself. You are actively avoiding the painful emotional experience of feeling confused. You are scared of unbroken complexity. When a mentor finally said those exact words to Arun, it changed everything. Just let that sink in for a second. It's not that you aren't capable of hard thinking. It's simply that the density of the information hasn't been sequenced for you yet. And you know, once you realize this, the fear actually begins to lose its grip.
So how do we actually break that complexity? We use the anti-procrastination entry method. It goes like this. First, name the task in a single line. Second, write exactly why it feels heavy. Be radically honest about the fog here. Third, find the very first 2-minute step. Just 2 minutes, nothing more. And finally, turn your vague confusion into one concrete question. By doing this, you are literally turning a sheer, unscalable wall into a reachable staircase. You're making the next action real enough to actually touch.
To really make this work, we absolutely have to dismantle this false narrative that fast equals smart. There is a massive, massive difference between processing speed under pressure and true ability. Ability is whether understanding can eventually be built. Speed is just how long that takes under specific conditions. Imagine a student who takes 4 minutes to solve a math problem that someone else solved in 40 seconds. But if that slower student expanded every single step and fully understood the logic, they are the one building eventual durable capacity. Time completely changes the picture of performance. Because true understanding is layered. It's not just a polished answer fired off in a split second. It moves through stages. Recognition, I've seen it. Definition, I can state it. Example, I can show it. Distinction, I know what it is not. Transfer, I can use it somewhere else. And finally, reconstruction. I can rebuild the idea from the ground up entirely without notes. Real understanding is a stable internal structure that survives being moved around. Just like the complex mathematical layers behind artificial intelligence systems, true human foundations are built slowly and deliberately. Whether you're learning algebra, machine learning, or a whole new language, you are essentially looking for the skeleton beneath the surface. You're observing measurement, structure, transformation, and correction. When you take the time to build on a strong foundation step by step, you can safely add as many floors as you want later without the whole house collapsing.
But even knowing all of this, why does the mind still sometimes just freeze before you even begin? It happens because of internal panic. A slow learner often carries a really heavy double load. One part of the mind is desperately trying to understand the material, while the other part is actively judging the self, whispering, "You should have understood this by now." And that self-criticism, it completely drains the exact mental energy you need to actually process the work. To quiet that harsh inner critic, we have to give our slow thinking a visible, concrete structure. When you're confused, don't just sit there staring vaguely at the screen. Name the question. Write down what is known and what is unknown. Then make one guess. Test that guess, and then revise it. This framework is so powerful because it flat out refuses to let your mind skip invisible steps. It turns aimless wandering into deliberate, disciplined reasoning.
When you're faced with a massive, intimidating project, try using the reachable parts grid. It proves that any hard task becomes totally bearable when you separate it into distinct dimensions. Map out your goal, identify the smaller pieces, figure out the required order, anticipate which steps will be the sticky, difficult ones, and identify exactly what support you'll need. Once you map it all out like this, overwhelm is practically impossible. You are no longer admiring an impossible mountain. You are managing a totally doable sequence.
This approach is especially vital when you're reading long, dense instructions. Whatever you do, don't read a page of rules as one giant block of anxiety. Instead, become a category maker. Extract the deadline. Pull out the required output, the format rules, the warnings. Panic is almost always caused by your brain trying to read everything on a page as equally and simultaneously urgent. Remember, separation brings calm.
Now, even with all these amazing tools, friction is still going to happen. But the key is diagnosing it accurately so you can apply the right repair. Are you facing fear, where the task feels dangerous to your very identity? Fog, where the instructions are just completely blurry? Fatigue, where you literally just lack the energy? Or false perfection, where you feel it absolutely must be beautiful on the very first try? You see, you can't treat fog with willpower. You can't treat fear with guilt. You have to name the specific roadblock to clear it.
Ultimately, this whole explainer comes back to one vital, undeniable truth. The mind cannot act well on what it has not yet separated. Slowness is not a lack of intelligence. Let me say that again. Slowness is not a lack of intelligence. When it is disciplined through decomposition, when you break things down into their first principles, slowness transforms from a perceived handicap into an incredibly powerful advantage. You see the joints, you see the structure, you truly deeply understand.
So the very next time you sit down at your desk and that page starts to feel like an insurmountable wall, I want you to take a breath, drop the shame entirely, and ask yourself this one simple, empowering question. What part of this have I not yet separated? Break it down, find your very first step, and trust your beautiful, deliberate mind to do the rest.